All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at Swiggy's IPO. One of India's biggest food delivery companies.
Yeah.
They just went public November 13th, 2024.
Big day.
Big day. We've got a whole bunch of sources for this one.
Oh, nice.
Got some financial news articles, some articles that give us a little bit of a peek.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the curtain, so to speak.
Right.
So our main goal today is to figure out what this IPO means for Swiggy's future.
Okay.
Especially compared to their main competitor, Zomato.
The big rival.
Yeah, the big rival.
Obviously.
And we'll also be looking at the leadership styles of the people running these companies.
Very interesting contrast there.
It is. It's going to be a really interesting deep dive.
I think so.
So let's jump right in. What was your take on the initial market response to Swiggy's IPO?
Well, I thought it was really interesting to see how they debuted on both the NSE and BSE.
Okay.
National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange, just to clarify.
Right.
And they actually exceeded the expectations set by the gray market.
No.
Which was really fascinating to see.
For those of us who don't follow the stock market super closely,
Sure.
What is the gray market?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Essentially,
I don't know much about it.
it's this kind of unofficial market where trading happens before a company's shares are officially listed on the stock exchange.
So it's like a...
So it gives those big investors a chance to gauge the demand
Gotcha.
and potentially buy shares early.
Oh, so it's like an early, like a pre-sale almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
So in Swiggy's case, the fact that their opening prices were higher than what the gray market predicted, that means there was even more excitement
More demand.
and demand for the stock than anticipated.
Than anyone really even thought. So they started strong.
Very strong.
What were the actual numbers?
Yeah. So on the NSE, their shares opened at a 7.69% premium, hitting 420 rupees per share. And on the BSE, it was a 5.6% premium, opening at 412 rupees.
So pretty similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at one point, their market cap, so that's the total value of all their shares,
Right.
briefly touched a massive 1 lakh crore rupees.
I mean, that's huge.
That's massive. So it seemed like things were
Looking good.
really good initially.
Absolutely.
But I understand there were some ups and downs.
Yeah, there were.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So it eventually settled a bit lower at around 89,549.08 crore rupees.
Still, I mean...
Yeah, that's a big...
Still massive.
Yeah.
Huge number.
But
what's interesting is the stock surged 15% during the day.
Wow.
But then dipped almost 5% soon after.
Oh, so it was a roller coaster.
I can do a roller coaster.
So what do you think? What do you make of that kind of fluctuation?
Well, that kind of volatility, it suggests
Tell us.
some uncertainty among investors about Swiggy's long-term, prospects.
Okay.
There's definitely excitement, but also, I think, some hesitation.
So like a wait-and-see approach.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
And this can be due to a number of factors, really.
Like what kind of factors?
Well, it could be the general, market conditions. Could be concerns about Swiggy's profitability. Especially compared to Zomato.
Right.
Or even just kind of a general cautiousness around the food delivery sector as a whole.
Okay, so this is where I think the personalities come in.
Yes.
Because we have to talk about Swiggy's CEO.
Got to talk about the CEO.
Sriharsha Majety.
Yeah.
This IPO listing, I mean...
Rare appearance.
This was like a rare public appearance for him.
Really was.
He's known for being so low-key.
The opposite of Zomato's CEO.
Almost the opposite.
Cinder Goyal.
Yeah.
Total opposite.
And Majety even called Swiggy's journey from an IIM Calcutta project to this massive company.
That's unbelievable.
A miracle.
It is kind of a miracle.
I mean, it really is quite a story. From a classroom idea to a multi-billion-dollar business.
That's amazing.
It is.
It really makes you think, though, does a CEO need to be a public figure to be successful?
Right.
It's a really good question.
On the one hand, you have Goyal, who's,
He's everywhere.
He's on social media, hosts a podcast, delivers orders himself, attends events.
He
is the face of Zomato.
Yeah, he is.
And then you have Majety.
Behind the scenes.
Who just prefers to stay behind the scenes.
Two very different approaches.
Completely different.
Is there like a right way or a wrong way to do this?
I think they both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
A visible CEO like Goyal can definitely build brand recognition and trust.
That makes sense.
But a more private leader like Majety,
Yeah.
they may be able to focus more internally on operations and long-term strategy.
So it's almost like they're playing two different games. Yeah.
But then this brings us to a quote that I read from a financial analyst that said, Swiggy lags Zomato in most operating metrics.
That's interesting.
So can you break that down for us? What does that even mean? And what does that mean for investors?
Right. So when they say operating metrics, they're talking about those key figures that show us how efficiently a company is being run.
Okay.
Things like customer acquisition costs,
right,
order frequency, average order value.
So like all the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the data points that analysts use to assess a company's health.
Makes sense.
So when this analyst says that Swiggy lags Zomato, they're suggesting that Zomato might be better at converting its efforts into profit.
But does that necessarily mean that Zomato's a better investment?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Or could Majety's less flashy approach actually have its own advantages in the long run? Something to consider.
That is a great question.
It is.
And I think that's something that we'll explore further. As we, as we take a deeper look at their approaches to leadership.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
It does.
I think.
So.
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating how these different leadership styles might influence investors. Zomato's Deepinder Goyal.
Right.
He's very much the public face of his company.
I mean, he's everywhere.
Right.
I read that he actually goes out and delivers orders himself sometimes.
He does.
And he's constantly on social media, interacting with customers.
Yeah, always engaging.
Yeah.
I've even seen pictures of him at big events.
Really?
Yeah, he's built a strong personal brand, which in turn, I think, strengthens the Zomato brand.
Do you think that's, like, strategic?
I think there's definitely a method to it.
Okay.
He's blurring the lines between CEO and brand ambassador.
I see.
And by being so visible and involved, he's humanizing the Zomato experience.
Right. It's like, the guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a smart marketing tactic, for sure. But it also, I think, gives him valuable firsthand insight.
Into the business.
So
he's not just, sitting in a boardroom.
Exactly.
He's actually out there.
He's out there experiencing the company.
Yeah.
From a customer's perspective, even a delivery partner's perspective.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
It is, yeah.
It's a huge contrast to Swiggy's Sriharsha Majety.
Oh, totally.
Who just, prefers to stay out of the limelight.
Yeah, Majety lets the company speak for itself.
So his approach is more like, if we provide a great service,
we deliver value.
That's all the marketing we need.
Exactly.
Do you think that's, like, effective in today's world?
Good question.
Don't you need, like, a strong online presence as a CEO?
I mean, it seems to be working for Goyal.
Right.
But I think Majety's more understated style.
Yeah.
It might have its own advantages.
Like what?
Well, by staying out of the spotlight, he avoids the constant scrutiny.
Oh, yeah.
That comes with being a public figure.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah.
And potentially, the pitfalls of social media.
Oh, drama.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He can really just focus on long-term strategies.
Okay.
Without the pressure of constantly needing to please everyone.
But don't investors get nervous when they don't see a CEO, like, out there advocating for the company?
Yeah, I think investors do want to see a CEO who's passionate and engaged.
Right.
But that can be demonstrated in different ways.
Okay.
Goyal does it through his very public persona.
Right.
Majety might be conveying those same messages internally.
Gotcha.
In meetings with employees, investors.
So we're really only seeing a small part of these CEOs' lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's impossible to judge their effectiveness based solely on, their social media presence.
I mean, fair enough.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about how those different approaches to leadership play out, in the long run.
Long term, yeah.
What does it mean for Swiggy and Zomato?
Well, they're both expanding beyond just food delivery, right?
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Into
groceries, household essentials.
Yeah.
Even electronics in some cases.
Like anything you need.
They both want to be the one-stop shop
for
anything you need, delivered as quickly as possible.
So they're both playing in the same arena, but with very different leadership style.
Yeah, almost like a real-time experiment in leadership, right? And how that translates to success.
Will we see their leadership styles converge over time?
Who knows?
Or will they continue to, like, chart their own courses?
It's going to be interesting to see.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of charting courses, we have to talk about those Swiggy employees.
Yeah.
who are probably still celebrating.
Still partying.
The IPO created a windfall for a lot of them.
It did, yeah.
I read that about 5,000 Swiggy employees became crowrepitous.
Millionaires through this IPO.
That's incredible.
It is.
That's a lot of people.
It really speaks to the potential
of India's startup ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little more about how this happened?
Sure.
What's an ESOP?
Okay, so ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan.
Okay.
It's a way for companies to give their employees ownership in the company.
Okay.
Typically through stock options.
Gotcha.
So when a company goes public, like Swiggy did, those options can be converted into shares.
Okay.
And depending on the IPO price and how many options you have, employees can see significant gains.
Like we're talking, in this case,
huge gains.
9,000 crore rupees.
Yeah. Total ESOP payout.
That's an insane amount of money.
It's a lot of money.
It's fantastic to see employees,
sharing the success.
Sharing in the success, yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think we also need to consider the potential consequences.
Of this level of wealth creation.
Is it always a good thing?
It's a complex issue.
Okay.
There are definitely both positive and negative aspects. While it's great to see individuals benefit, we also need to think about the broader social and economic implications.
So in what ways could this be a negative thing?
Well, for example, imagine a scenario where a large number of people in a particular area suddenly come into a lot of money.
Right.
This can create a ripple effect on the local economy.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's say there's a sudden surge in demand for housing, in a specific neighborhood.
Okay.
This influx of wealth from the ESOPs could lead to a rapid increase in property prices.
Oh, wow.
Making it more difficult for others to afford housing in that area.
So the people who didn't benefit from the IPO, they might actually be worse off.
Yeah, potentially priced out.
Wow. So it's not just about the individuals involved. It's about the broader impact on the community.
The whole picture.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, it's really something to think about.
It is, yeah. I mean, it raises questions about economic mobility in India.
Absolutely.
While these Swiggy employees are certainly deserving of their newfound wealth.
Of course.
It does highlight the fact that opportunities for these kinds of financial gains are often concentrated in very specific sectors.
Yeah, and often for a select few.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the future. If these kinds of windfalls become more common in the startup world, will we see a shift in the, traditional paths to wealth creation?
That's a good question.
I think it's something to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's something to keep an eye on.
India's startup ecosystem is booming.
It's exploding.
The potential for wealth creation is enormous.
Huge potential.
But it's crucial to make sure that this growth is inclusive.
Absolutely.
And benefits, a wider segment of the population.
Right. We don't want to widen the gap.
Right.
Yeah.
Between the haves and the have-nots.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that even positive events can have
intended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
It's important to be aware of all the complexities involved.
It is. And I think we'll dive deeper into those potential downsides.
Yeah.
As well as, some possible solutions.
Absolutely.
When we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Swiggy deep dive.
Back at it.
We've covered their IPO, those interesting CEO personalities, and those big employee windfalls.
Yeah, huge.
But, as we were just talking about, there's a bigger picture here.
Absolutely.
When we talk about this level of wealth creation.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating case study in how sudden wealth impacts not just individuals, but also the broader economic landscape.
So it's not just like a feel-good story.
Well,
there are some
it's complicated.
Potential negatives that come along with this.
India, like many countries, faces challenges with income inequality.
Right.
And these events can sometimes exacerbate those disparities.
In what ways?
Well, think about it. A large number of people in a particular area suddenly come into a lot of money.
Yeah.
It can create a ripple effect.
Give me an example.
Sure. Let's say there's a sudden surge in demand for housing in a specific neighborhood.
Okay.
The influx of wealth from those ESOPs could lead to a rapid increase in property prices.
Oh, wow. So
making it harder for others to afford housing in that area.
So the people who didn't benefit from the IPO...
Right, they might actually be worse off.
Wow.
Yeah, potentially priced out.
So it's not just about those individuals. It's about the whole...
It's the community.
The whole community, the ripple effects.
The ripple effects, exactly.
It's a lot to consider.
It is, yeah.
And it also makes me wonder about economic mobility in India.
It's a big question.
You know, while these Swiggy employees deserve their wealth, of course.
Absolutely.
It does highlight the fact that these opportunities for these kinds of financial gains... Yeah.
They're often concentrated in specific sectors.
Right.
And, often for a select few.
It's a select few, yeah.
It makes you wonder about the future.
The future, yeah.
If these kinds of windfalls become more common, will we see, a shift in the traditional paths to wealth creation?
It's something to watch for sure.
Yeah.
I think India's startup ecosystem is booming.
Yeah.
Huge potential for wealth creation.
But it's so important to make sure that this growth is inclusive.
Absolutely.
And benefits a wider segment of the population.
It has to benefit more than just a few.
Right. Otherwise, we just widen the gaps
between
the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah. And that's not what we want.
No, absolutely not.
No.
So I guess as we wrap up this deep dive into Swiggy, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the big thing to think about is all these factors we've discussed.
Yeah.
The contrasting leadership styles, the different investor sentiments.
Right. Potential impact on wealth distribution.
Yeah.
They're all intertwined.
It's all connected.
The future of these companies.
Yeah.
It doesn't just depend on their business strategies.
It's more than that.
It's also about how they navigate these broader
societal
and economic forces.
It's not just about the numbers, it's about the impact
exactly
that these companies have
on the world around them.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And the big question is, how can we create an environment where innovation and wealth creation are both sustainable and equitable?
That is the question.
Yes.
Something for all of us to think about.
To ponder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Into the world of Swiggy, Zomato, and...
India's startup scene.
Yeah, India's incredible startup scene.
It's an exciting time.
It really is.
It is.
We encourage you to keep exploring these issues.
Absolutely.
And consider those broader implications.
Think about the big picture.
Of these companies' journeys.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Until next time.
See you then.